Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 5, verse 10, "Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven."
The Bible is filled with those who are persecuted for their faith and their undying commitment to the Lord. The Old Testament prophets, for example, were very unpopular people. These people were chosen by God to deliver His message to the people of Israel. And because that message often served as a warning of what might happen to the Israelites if they didn't turn from their wicked ways, then you could probably guess that that message was quite often not received very well. In fact, the words spoken by some of the prophets were actually considered to be so offensive that in many cases it often resulted in them suffering a very brutal and violent death. Alright, 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 4 tells us, "For it was so, when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, that Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread and water." Elijah, if you'll recall, was also one of those on Jezebel's hit list. Especially after he called her husband Ahab a troublemaker, and then went on to defeat and destroy the prophets of Baal at Mount Carmel. Go Elijah. But the persecution of God's servants is certainly not something found only in the Old Testament. We're first introduced to Saul, who would later become the Apostle Paul in the New Testament book of Acts. Now, Saul at that time was actually known for his hatred and persecution of Christians. If you'll recall, Saul was not only present, but also gave his consent to the stoning of Stephen. But then, Jesus turns the tables on Saul by revealing himself to him on the road to Damascus. Saul sees this blinding but glorious light shining down from heaven. He falls to the ground, and then Jesus asks him that million-dollar question, "Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me?" In persecuting Christ's followers, Saul was actually persecuting Christ himself. But it didn't take long for Saul, the persecutor, to become Paul, the persecuted. In Acts chapter 9, verse 16, God, speaking to Ananias regarding Paul, says, "For I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake." And suffer he did. Probably one of the best passages of Scripture that neatly sums up the suffering and persecution that Paul faced as he spread the gospel message is found in 2 Corinthians chapter 11. Paul tells us in verses 24 through 25, "Of the Jews 5 times received I 40 stripes, save one. Thrice was I beaten with rods, once was I stoned, thrice I suffered shipwreck. A night and a day I have been in the deep." As we read through the Bible, we find many examples of people who were so strong in their faith and in their commitment to God the Father and His Son Jesus Christ that they were willing to endure the type of harsh treatment that most of us these days couldn't even begin to imagine. But what about the world we live in today? Is Christian persecution just a thing of the past? Or does it in fact still exist? This is a Christian publication called The Voice of the Martyrs. Now, if you're not familiar with them, I would invite you to check out their website. All right, just type The Voice of the Martyrs into your search engine. Now, this magazine is the most recent issue. Okay, this is the July 2017 issue. And in these pages, we learn about the Christian believers in the country of Sudan. Now, Omar al-Bashir, Sudan's president, has literally waged war on people in his own country, and especially Christians. And there are certain areas of Sudan that this man is targeting as he tries to eliminate those types of people that don't quite fit in with the kind of nation that he's trying to build. You know, kind of like Hitler did. And one of those areas is the Nuba Mountains. Now, I'm going to read one paragraph to you from this magazine regarding the people living in this area. Since 2012, the Sudanese military has dropped 4,000 bombs in the region. So the people living there have grown accustomed to daily bombings. The children recognize the sound of approaching government planes and can even tell by changes in the sound of the engine when a bomb has been loosed. When they hear the pitch of the engine suddenly change, they run for the shelter of a foxhole. Every hospital, school, church, and home has one nearby. So all of these places have a foxhole nearby so they can run to it when these bombing raids are going on. Now I'm going to try to show you this picture. And I hope you can see it all right. This is a picture of Sudanese children coming up out of a foxhole after a bombing raid. Now, can you imagine being a child that age, living in constant fear because your own government and military, the ones who should be protecting you, are actually trying to destroy you and your family? And for what reason? Simply because your family and the other families living around you are followers of Jesus Christ. Okay, these people aren't hurting anyone. All they want is to live peaceful lives as Christian believers. But that's not going to happen. Simply because the God that they worship is not the same as the one that is worshipped by Sudan's president. In Daniel chapter 3, we read about the large golden image that was erected in Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. Now, we look at verses 4 and 5, we'll see that very specific instructions were given to the people there regarding this image. So, starting with verse 4 of Daniel chapter 3, we read, "Then an herald cried aloud, 'To you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king hath set up.'" So whenever these people hear this music, all right, they're supposed to file out like robots and come out and bow down before this large piece of gold. Now, one of the videos I watched on YouTube recently about North Korea made me think of this very passage. If you type the words, "I witness North Koreans literally worship Kim Jong-un," all right, into your YouTube search bar, or just click on the link below, all right, in the description, you'll get to see an eye-opening interview with a man named Jayant Bhandari. Now, Mr. Bhandari is an analyst with Anarcho Capital, and he's visited at least 80 countries looking for investment opportunities in the natural resource sector. One of those countries was North Korea, and he tells us in this interview about a bizarre early morning ritual that he witnessed and was required to be a part of during his stay there. And Mr. Bhandari says that the citizens of North Korea are awakened by this propaganda music that starts at about 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning. Now, when this music starts playing, all right, these people have to get out of bed, come out of their homes, walk down to the public square, and as an act of reverence and respect to their leaders, or more like an act of worship, in my opinion, these people polish the statues of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. And not only that, but Jayant Bhandari also says that even as a tourist visiting there, he was required to bow down before the Kim statues during this morning ritual. Sounds a little bit like that passage we read in Daniel chapter 3, doesn't it? And just as there was a heavy price to pay for those who refused to bow down to King Nebuchadnezzar's golden image, there are also severe consequences for that small percentage of people living in North Korea who refuse to go along with this type of atheistic communist regime. Now, Christians make up only about 2% of North Korea's population, and many of them suffer intense persecution just because they choose to worship Christ instead of members of the Kim dynasty. Now, the internet, along with several books, are filled with testimonies of Christians who have defected from North Korea. One woman whose testimony I saw on a YouTube video says that her own husband didn't confide in her for a very long time that he was actually a Christian. All right, because the consequences that some people face in North Korea, they can be so severe that even spouses sometimes find it difficult to share their faith with each other. Parents often try to hide their Christian beliefs from their children as well, all right, out of fear that they might give them away. Another testimony I read on the Open Doors website is from a woman who, when she was 12 years old, accidentally came across a Bible that her parents had hidden away in their closet. Now, even at 12 years old, this girl knew that in North Korea, the Bible was an illegal book, and that this could cost her her life if the authorities ever found out about it. All right, this courageous 12-year-old actually ended up confronting her parents about this forbidden book that she had found, which actually resulted in her becoming a Christian herself. But she says at that time, she was so scared that she actually considered turning her parents in. Christians in North Korea who choose to meet with each other and worship and have Bible study together usually do so in secret. And they often meet in places like the woods or even in cornfields, so as not to be discovered. So just what is it then that these people are so scared of? I mean, what are the consequences of being a Christian in North Korea? Open Doors is a non-profit organization that helps persecuted Christians in more than 60 countries. Now, since the year 2002, North Korea has ranked #1 on what Open Doors calls their World Watch List, which basically means that Open Doors considers North Korea to be the most difficult country for a Christian to live in. Now, I'm going to read just a small section from the Open Doors website regarding these faithful followers of Christ in North Korea. I think just these few sentences really sum up what these people are facing in their daily lives. So, reading directly from their website, it says, "Worship of the ruling Kim family is mandated for all citizens, and those who don't comply, including Christians, are arrested, imprisoned, tortured, or killed. Entire Christian families are imprisoned in hard labor camps, where unknown numbers die each year from torture, beatings, overexertion, and starvation. Those who attempt to flee to South Korea through China risk execution or life imprisonment, and those who stay behind often fare no better." If you are a Christian living in America, watching this video today, where you have unlimited freedom to read your Bible, pray openly, and to worship in a private or a public setting, could you even begin to imagine what these people in countries like Sudan, North Korea, and many others are facing every day of their lives? Do you even think you could do it? Is your faith and devotion to Jesus Christ strong enough to be able to handle imprisonment, torture, bombing raids, and even execution? Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 5, verse 12, "Rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you." Just like the prophets of biblical times, these people will also one day receive a great reward. But until that time, they desperately need our prayers and our support. Lift up these people in your daily talks with the Lord, and allow them to inspire you to grow stronger and bolder in your faith. All right, visit websites like Voice of the Martyrs and Open Doors USA. These ministries are filled with people who have risked their lives and put themselves in great danger to assist our Christian brothers and sisters in countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, and many others. Do not rely on the mainstream media to keep you informed on what is really taking place in these areas. Instead, go to these websites, all right? Get the publications that they offer, and they will keep you up to date on what is actually happening. And they'll let you know how you can help and support these persecuted Christians. Well, I know for those of you watching this video today that the content has not been pleasant. All right, this is not the type of message that any of us wants to hear, but it is the type of message that we need to hear. My purpose in making this video today is to raise awareness. Be aware of what is going on out there. And once you become aware, make others aware as well. Thanks for watching, and God bless.